Welcome to the Goodyear City Council meeting. We're excited to have you be a part of this important public process. Tonight, you will have the opportunity to address City Council on both non-agenda and agenda items. You must fill out a speaker request card in order to address the City Council. The agendas and speaker request cards are located in the back of the council chambers. Please drop your completed card in the tray next to the blank speaker cards. If the meeting has already begun, please hand it to the city employee at the back of the room. You may check the "I do not wish to speak" option on the card. This allows you to let council know your opinion without having to speak. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, please contact a staff member if you need any assistance. Public comment on a non-agenda item will take place during the citizen comment portion of the evening. These are items that don't appear on tonight's formal agenda. The city clerk will call your name when it's time for you to speak. At that time, please approach the podium and tell us your name for the record. You'll have a maximum of 3 minutes. The timer is on the screens visible from the podium. Note that you may also choose not to speak if other speakers before you have said what you wanted to say. Shouting, cheering, and loud noises will not be tolerated, and violators may be removed for disrupting the meeting. Goodyear City Council meetings stream live on Facebook, YouTube, X, and online at goodyearaz.gov. Follow the city's social media pages so you don't miss out on all that's happening in Goodyear. Thank you for coming to this meeting and being an active part of your city. And remember, it's a great time to be in Goodyear.
I'd like to call a regular meeting to order for December 11th, 2023. Everybody's marked present. Clerk, please read the roll.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. Please join Vice Mayor Cano in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, as we get near to the close of 2023, we give you thanks for our many blessings. We know what it's like to live in times of plenty and in times of lack. Let us be thankful for the provision we have to meet the needs of our growing city. This is a special time of year, and many celebrate holidays according to their tradition and faith. Right now it's Hanukkah, and we pray for the peace of Israel in this holy time. We thank you for our employees who work around the clock on holidays and who are away from their families as they serve the residents of the cities. This also can be a hard time of year. And Lord, we pray for food for the hungry, jobs for those who are seeking work, safety in families, hope for the hopeless, help for people in need. We pray for all of the safety. We pray for the safety of all of our police, fire, and military personnel. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Now's the time for citizens who would like to address the City Council on any non-agenda items within the jurisdiction of the City of Goodyear. Are there any speaker cards?
Mayor, I see one coming up now.
See one coming down?
So Ignacio Delgadillo?
Come on down, council, listen to any comments, respond to criticism, request a staff investigator report, or manage schedule a future agenda. Just name your name, and if you would, just if you're a resident of Goodyear, you don't have to give an address.
Yes, my name is Ignacio Delgadillo, and I am a resident of Goodyear.
Okay. Got 3 minutes. Go for it.
Thank you. So my wife and I have been actively commuting by bike around the city for almost 2 years. We've been living in Goodyear for about 8 years now. Okay. We do everything from dropping off our son to going to the grocery store all by bike. I even came here tonight by bike through the canal path, through the Bullard Wash. So I'm here tonight to ask the city to prioritize protected bicycle infrastructure as part of the city's active transportation recommendations. To have it go beyond relying on paint as protection for bike lanes. We all know that distracted driving is unfortunately on the rise. The city of Goodyear and Goodyear PD even had a campaign this past week on enforcing our distracted driving and hands-free violations, or as they call it, don't drive dumb. The only protection for us is separated and or physically protected bike lanes. Having safer bicycle infrastructure will encourage more of our residents to to take up walking and biking to get around the city to accomplish tasks otherwise done by car. I'm sure you have all seen or even experienced the pickup and drop-off line at schools all around the city of Goodyear. I live on the north side of Goodyear, and there's a lot of schools over there, so we see it and experience it all the time. Having the safe bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure would mean less congestion during the busiest times of the day for a lot of our residents and citizens. Much like the construction, parking spaces and the office facilities around City Hall is undoubtedly essential for attracting businesses and fostering economic activity in Goodyear. However, I urge you to consider integrating the same forward-thinking approach by incorporating protected bike lanes into the urban development of our city. Just as convenient parking and modern office spaces make it easy for people to conduct business, accessible and safe cycling infrastructure can attract a new wave of residents and visitors to our cities. So I leave you all with this. It is said that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time was today. I feel the same way about bicycle infrastructure. Let's not wait. Second best time is now to start planning and protecting our citizens. Thank you.
I don't know if you were in our meeting at our work session or not earlier before here, but that was a top priority of the council was bicycle safety.
Yes.
So we had already discussed that prior to this meeting here.
Yeah, I got to hear a little bit of it, so
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
But it is a priority, so just to let you know that.
excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it and appreciate all your guys' time today.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. City clerk, please read well, first of all, any other cards? No, okay, thank you. Will city clerk please read the consent agenda items 2 through 6? What's that, 6 by title only?
Number 2, approval of minutes. Number 3, approval of new Series 12 restaurant liquor license for Macayo's Mexican Food located at 1474 North Litchfield Road. Number 4, authorize the mayor to execute an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, with Maricopa County to receive American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds to be used to support the development of affordable housing in Goodyear. Number 5, approve the Southwest Family Advocacy Center intergovernmental agreement, IGA, with partnering agencies and Department of Child Safety. Number 6, approve the grant and aid agreement provided by the Tohono O'odham Nation.
Does anyone in the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second? I've got a motion and a second on the board. Open up for discussion. Seeing none, can we get a vote? Passes 7-0, thank you. I would like to remind council to wait for the motion and a second for discussion on our business item. Tonight, we're going to receive the 2023 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report and Audit. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mayor Pizzillo, members of the council. My name is Jared Askelson. I am the Deputy Finance Director here with the City of Goodyear. Tonight, we are going to do a couple things. We're going to talk a little bit about our annual comprehensive financial report and also the results of our audit. Our independent auditor, Jill Shaw from Heinfeld Meach, is here tonight, and she will be giving a presentation in accordance with state statute after my presentation is completed. What is the annual comprehensive financial report, also called the ACFR, because we're government and we love acronyms? It's a standardized set of reports that was laid out by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board so that potential investors can make comparisons to other cities or potentially even non-governmental agencies to decide where they're going to invest their money. It's also required by state statute to complete an ACFR each year. Looking at the numbers within the ACFR, we're looking at the government-wide net position, essentially the net worth of the city. You can see that we increased by 8% to just over $1.2 billion during fiscal year 23, which ended June 30th of 2023. Looking specifically at governmental funds, so the general fund, the largest piece there of fund balance, you can see an increase of 12.6% to to just under $340 million. How that breaks down, we have about $2 million of non-spendable items, inventory, and prepaid expenses. We have restricted funds, largely our impact fees and some of the general obligation bonds that we are spending on projects, making up $124 million. $5.3 million of committed funds, that's for asset replacement at the ballpark. Assigned funds, $173 million. The biggest piece of this is actually we've assigned the fiscal year 24 budget. We've already spoken for those funds, so we assign those out of the fund balance. And finally, we have the unassigned amount. I mentioned this during the work session, $35 million that we will be talking about when we're putting together the fiscal year 25 budget. Let's move on to the audit itself. So we have 5 items. The independent auditor's report. The most important thing is that we have an unmodified opinion from our auditors. It's considered a clean audit. A report of internal controls identified no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which is good. A report on state legal compliance says that we've complied in all material respects, also a good thing. Our single audit report is complete with no issues, so this is a report on our federal funds. The final item is the annual expenditure limitation report. This is currently underway and will be submitted to the state after the first of the calendar year. So to recap, unmodified opinion, clean audit, that's a good thing. No significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, also a good thing. And our financial position continues on an upward trend. And with that, I will turn it over to Jill from Heinfeld Meach to give you a presentation of the audit.
Thank you, Jared. Mayor Pizzillo, members of the council, thank you for having me here tonight to talk about the audit. My name is Jill Shaw. I'm with Heinfeld Meach, the external audit firm, and I'm the engagement partner that oversees the audit from a quality control perspective and things of that nature. All right, so just to give you a little bit first about an idea of the timeline. This year the audit started in June. It is our first year doing the audit in a while. Took about a 4 or 5 year gap. And so we started preliminary work in June and came out on site in September and completed mainly looking at those federal programs that Jared mentioned and some other compliance perspectives. And then we come back again in October when the books are closed, all the numbers are final, and look more at the numbers side of things. And the reports were just issued November 28th. So that's a really short timeline, which is a really good sign. I always tell councils that if reports are on time and we did not identify any material misstatements, those are probably just the 2 biggest indicators of the success of an audit. As Jared mentioned, it is required by statute that the audit reports be brought to councils. I know even previous to the statute, a lot of councils were seeing the reports, but this just made it more uniform statewide, and this started a couple of years ago. And while council is accepting audit reports, city management has already taken responsibility for the financial reports, and they sign a letter at the end of every audit stating that they are taking that responsibility not only for the financial statements, but also for maintenance of what we call internal controls, but all those checks and balances that are in place to make sure that things like fraud and material misstatements do not occur. Within the scope of our services, we did do an audit in accordance with auditing standards as well as government auditing standards, being a government, as well as the single audit, which covers that federal piece. There are separate audit reports also issued for each of the 9 community facilities districts, so we also issued a clean opinion on each of those districts. And the annual expenditure limitation report is forthcoming. That'll go to the state. And then we also issue a report in compliance with statute over the HERF funds. We look at the expenditures of those funds and just make sure that they're being spent for street-related projects in accordance with statute. In any of the communications that we issue, there's a lot of discussion as far as what our responsibilities are as auditors and then what the city's responsibilities are. So fraud being something that always comes up there because it's a common misconception that the purpose of the audit is to look for fraud. And while we do conduct some inquiries with management and also council about their awareness of fraud, that's not the primary purpose. The primary purpose of the audit and our ultimate responsibility is to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance on the financial statements. So what that means is we set some materiality thresholds. It would just be impossible for us to look at every dollar. So we set some thresholds and look at those transactions over that materiality threshold, and that's what our opinion is centered around. Each year there are sometimes some new accounting standards, so we're required to include in our communication if there were any new standards during the year. This year there was a new standard that required governments to record a liability for these subscription-based information technology arrangements, or SPITAs, since we love our acronyms. And what these are agreements that governments previously expensed, but if the government is entering into a multi-year agreement, that now is assessed and potentially recorded into the financial statements as a liability. So that was something new. There was another new standard that had to do with public-private and public-public arrangements. We evaluated how that applied to the city and did not identify any changes that would be required to the city's financial statements as a result of that standard, but that was also new. We're required to let councils know that there are estimates in the financial statements, and within Goodyear's estimates are very routine things like useful lives for depreciable assets, the pension plans, those being based on actuarial valuations are large estimates. So these are all routine things that we see at cities. If we had recommended any audit adjustments, these would be instances where we found an error in the financial statements prepared by the city, or something of that nature. We would have to recommend an adjustment. So I'm happy to report that we did not identify any adjustments. So when we refer to no material misstatements, that's what we're saying here. So that's a great indicator. Other things that we're required to communicate with councils, we had no major disagreements, or no disagreements really with management over how to apply financial accounting principles or standards. Management did sign the letter at the end of the audit, taking responsibility. And then something as auditors, the crux of our profession is being independent. So our independence is something that we're continually evaluating during the audit process and making sure that we're not crossing that line of auditing our own work and overstepping those boundaries. Just a few highlights. I know the financial reports were included within the council packet, but the biggest thing is probably on page 13 with the unmodified opinion is the independent auditor's report is that clean opinion. And then just to highlight some other areas, the management's discussion and analysis and the statistical section are a couple of areas that, in addition to financial statements that you routinely see, are a couple of areas in that annual report that provide some background behind the numbers of why balances increased, what some major changes were, as well as the statistical section. Although that's the one section of the report that's not audited, a lot of people find it to be the most interesting, ironically, because it provides a really good 10-year trend of things like revenue indicators. And for a city like Goodyear that has grown so much in 10 years, it's just phenomenal to see what those numbers look like. Within the single audit report, each year we're required to rotate which federal programs we look at. This year we did look at the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, so sometimes referred to as those ARPA's funds, as one-time monies that came through as a result of the pandemic. We looked at the expenditures of those and did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses as it relates to that federal program as well. So just in final comments, I would really like to thank Jared, Doug, everyone in the finance department for everything they do to get the audit process done. They upload hundreds of documents to our portal that we take a look at, so it's not an easy or quick process, and we really appreciate them being so responsive to all of our requests. All of the audits are all meeting the state and federal regulatory deadlines. The deadline with the state and federal government is March 31st, so the city is well ahead of that deadline. That's great. And then the city plans to submit the report to the Government Finance Officers Association by the December deadline to be considered for that Certificate of Achievement award that they've received in previous years. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Let's see. Well, There's no action required on this, so I'm just gonna see who wants to speak. I got Councilmember Hampton.
Yeah, no, I would say thank you to Jill and the team for all your hard work. I remember when you first came last time you were here, as well as still on the audit subcommittee. So, yeah, thank you for a thorough audit, and it's always good to receive good feedback from our city to know that we're doing the right things and that we're staying above board and staying in compliance for our residents and our citizens. So thank you.
Thank you there. Councilmember Gwale Campbell?
Yes, I want to thank Jared and Jill for the report tonight, but Jared, I really want to thank all of the staff, because every single person that works in finance probably had something to do with this report in some fashion. And it's wonderful that we have a clean audit. It's always nice to have that. How often are we supposed to be audited? Every 4 or 5 years?
No,
or
every
what?
year. Yeah. Every year.
Mayor Pizzillo, Councilmember Campbell, every year we have an audit. I think Heinfeld and Beach 4 years ago was our
Oh,
auditor.
that was
They
what
had
I
a
was
break.
waiting
We
for.
had Hinton Burdick was our auditors for the 4-year period in
good.
between. So we have them done every year.
Okay, great. Well, that's what I thought. And then when she said 4 years, I thought, gosh, wouldn't we do the other 3? So, well, thank you very much. We're just really pleased with your report, and thank you so much for coming tonight and giving it to us.
Thank you, and again, you know, as a former member of the audit subcommittee, I appreciate all the work that you guys do. Thank you very much. Anything else? With that, again, there's no action to be taken on this one, so thank you. Next item is the business consider adopting the 2024 state and federal legislative agenda. Please introduce yourself to the public.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Jenna Carrico, Government Relations Manager. Thank you for having us tonight to present the 2024 state and federal legislative agenda. I am also pleased to announce for the very first time at a council meeting, Haley Ralph, our new Government Relations Coordinator, who will be co-presenting with me. I know it's late and we'll try to get through this quickly, and I hope this subject is so exciting it just revives everybody. Next month, January 8th, believe it or not, will mark the opening day of the 56th Legislature second regular session. And each year, as you know, we come before you, Mayor and Council, to ask for approval of this agenda, which helps define the city's legislative priorities and helps us when deciding on how to weigh in on a bill of interest at the Capitol. Tonight, we'll go through a quick recap of a few of the hot topics from last session. We'll get into how the 2024 election season may change things for us. We'll discuss the agenda itself and what to expect out of this upcoming session. I do have an opportunity for questions and discussion at the end, but please feel free to stop us at any time if you want to focus on something on a particular slide. Before we get into that, I always like to remind those in the audience and those at home that have stuck it out this long, just some of the different federal and regional agencies you all are involved in outside of the legislature that helps our city remain strong regional partners. Of huge importance, Mayor Pizzillo serves on the executive committee of the League of Cities and Towns. This leadership role helps ensure Goodyear will have a seat at the table during the creation of the League's policy development. This is just one of the many seats he holds. Others include Maricopa Association of Governments, Luke West Valley Council, and Westmark. We are especially fortunate beyond our mayor to have so many council members who have tirelessly worked their way into leadership roles within these agencies, including Councilmember Loretano, who just recently was appointed as president of the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, and Councilmember Stipp, who currently chairs the Valley Metro Board of Directors. For sake of time, these are just a couple examples I will offer of the committees, boards, and community initiatives our mayor and council contribute to, but thank you all very much. Getting into just a couple stats from the last 2 years, each year we seem to break new records. This session was no exception, with a record-breaking number of bills introduced at 1,674, and we far surpassed the longest session in state history at 204 days, resulting in that unusually late effective date of October 30th. Beyond that, we see the numbers are fairly similar from 2022 to 2023, with the obvious exception of vetoed bills, as we experienced the first full session transitioning from Republican Governor Doug Ducey to Democrat Governor Katie Hobbs. Governor Hobbs now holds the title for most gubernatorial vetoes, beating Democratic Governor Janet Napolitano's previous record of 58 back in 2005. I do expect this session to be different than the last in many ways, most glaringly as we head into an election year with a steep budget deficit, which we'll touch on in future slides. It is the hope of many legislators to make some tough cut and sweep decisions and hit the campaign trail early, which could impact the effective date and the number of bills that make it up to the governor in 2024. On this slide, you'll see a couple of our top priority issues from last session. By now, you all know these very well, so we'll briefly recap these, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you'd like me to elaborate on anything. Not to rehash old history, but quickly over a year and a half ago, as the session adjourned and we were headed into election season with an unknown future, Governor Ducey unexpectedly vetoed the bill to extend the countywide transportation sales tax known as Prop 400. This action set in motion the next 13 months of near panic, maybe that was just me, as the region grappled with the possibility that we would not receive legislative approval to put this critical tax extension on the ballot. But thanks to the committed work of Mayor Pizzillo and his counterparts, the Maricopa Association of Governments, Valley Metro, and countless others, the deal on what we're now officially calling Proposition 479 was cut at the final hour before the legislature adjourned sine die this year. Governor Hobbs signed Senate Bill 1102, which now requires Maricopa County to place the question to extend our region's half-cent transportation sales tax on the ballot in November 2024. As the tax expires at the end of 2025, we must now focus on receiving voter approval in order to see projects like the State Route 30, a much-needed I-10 reliever, come to fruition. And as many of you pointed out during our work session, this tax extension will also determine the fate of many of the current transit and dial ride services offered across the region. Regrettably, this good news came at a hefty price tag for most cities and towns across the state. Republican legislators negotiated the repeal of cities' ability to charge a residential rental tax in exchange for Prop 479, a local impact statewide of over $200 million, and to Goodyear a starting general fund reduction of $5 million beginning in 2025. While legislators focused on taking local revenues away, they had an excess of their own state funding this year to deal with. In rare form, the state's $17.8 billion budget package was completed nearly 2 months before adjournment of the session, as top issues like the two I just highlighted came to resolution much later. This year, the state had nearly $2.5 billion in surplus, largely considered a one-time excess of funds. Republican leadership divided these funds into essentially two buckets between Republican and Democrat caucuses, each Republican representative receiving $20 million and each Republican senator receiving $30 million. Some members grouping their amounts together to allocate for larger projects. On the Democrat side, although an equal amount was allotted, Governor Hobbs took the lead in negotiating the caucus's priorities, resulting in fewer district projects for individual members. This segues nicely into the two bills that Goodyear ran this legislative session. Me personally, I always like to start with the bad news, which finds itself in Senate Bill 1516. Despite a valiant effort by Mayor Pizzillo, Chiefs Louisi and Rodriguez, Sumit Mohan, Chris Bridges, and our lobbying team, Nick Simonetta and Anna Oliver, who were down at the legislature with me multiple times this year to testify to the great benefit $10 million in state funding would have toward our current efforts to triple the capacity on the Estrella Parkway Bridge. It ultimately was not among the projects prioritized by the bill sponsor during the budget. Despite this, we continue conversations and efforts to garner support from our entire legislative delegation should an opportunity for state funding arise again in the future. On to the good news, Senate Bill 1006 was a great partnership with the City of Glendale, Mayor Pizzillo, and our City Clerk, Darcy McCracken, to modernize posting and reduce burdensome staffing requirements. After receiving large bipartisan support, Governor Hobbs signed this bill that will allow us to cut back on the number of actions you all have to take during a council meeting when declaring exhibits to an ordinance of public record. Unfortunately, back again to more of the bad news. Over the last couple years, as you all know, we have seen more and more bills aimed at changing local development processes, including multiple legislative efforts to pass a by-right zoning bill that would essentially allow landowners to do whatever they want with their land despite voter-approved zoning. The worst part is the proponents couch these bills as being aimed at creating more affordable housing, although to date, nothing in the proposals we've seen actually requires these housing to be truly affordable. We were successful again this year working through the league to stall the most egregious of these policies while still working in good faith with the Senate President on meaningful proposals that allow cities to approve certain actions administratively, like site and development plans. With the resignation of Senator Steve Kaiser, who's championed the by-right issue on the Republican side the last couple of years, It is yet to be seen who may emerge as the caucus's leader on these issues moving forward. We will touch on this in future slides. Unless you have any questions so far, I'm going to hand this over now to Haley to touch on elections, Goodyear's representation, and kickstart the overview of our formal legislative agenda.
Thank you, Jenna. Mayor, Council, again, my name is Haley Ralph, and I am the new Government Relations Coordinator. It's an honor to be here speaking with you tonight. So last fall, we experienced the first election after the once-per-decade redrawing of congressional and legislative districts that resulted in historic turnover leading into the 2023 session. The wave of new legislators included 29 newly elected members of the 60-member House and 9 newly elected members of the 30-member Senate. Both chambers maintained Republican control with a 1-member margin for each. As Jenna briefly mentioned, the legislature will want this upcoming session to be quick so they can hit the campaign trail. Governor Hobbs holds a lot of leveraging power as she runs every 4 years and is not up for re-election this coming cycle. As a result, she will not face the same urgency to wrap up the legislative session. This could be a benefit to her when negotiating with Republican leaders in each chamber. As folks prepare for session, the reality of election season looms in the background, and many have their eyes on a number of swing districts that could impact the slim Republican majority in each chamber, including Goodyear's very own LD23. In the House, our representatives in this southern district are split with Republican Michelle Pena and Democrat Mariana Sandoval. Both representatives have announced that they are planning to run for re-election, while other individuals have already submitted statements of interest to challenge the incumbents. As a highly competitive district, this will be one of the increasingly important legislative races to watch. Other important swing district races that will be of interest to monitor will be LDs 2 and 4 in Phoenix and LD 13 in the Chandler-Gilbert area. Each of these races were tight in 2022 and are expected to be just as narrow in the upcoming cycle. The most surprising news this interim came from the announcement from CD8 Congresswoman Debbie Lesko that she will be resigning from her seat after this year. We have already heard from former 2022 statewide candidates such as Abe Hamadat and Blake Masters that they will run for Lesko's seat. This could also potentially shake up the legislature with announcements from current House Speaker Ben Toma and current Glendale Senator Anthony Kern that they are planning to run as well. At this point in time, we have heard that neither will resign to run, but that could change depending on how long session drags on. Continuing on federal elections, Senator Kyrsten Sinema's Senate seat will be up for grabs in 2024. Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego from CD3 and former 2022 Republican gubernatorial candidate Carrie Lake have both announced their candidacy to run for the Senate seat. Sinema, who announced her transition from the Democratic Party to the Independent Party last December, has not yet announced whether she will run for re-election. With redistricting in the fall of 2021, Goodyear is now in congressional districts 7 and 9, represented by Democrat Raul Grijalva and Republican Paul Gosar. And of course, we still work with our statewide senators, Kyrsten Sinema and Mark Kelly. I just wanted to include our district map to showcase our 4 legislative districts after redistricting in 2021, with LD 2022 in Southeast Goodyear, 23 to the south, LD 25 in the northwest, and LD 29 to the north. For the sake of time, I know that we've been here a long time. I'll just quickly move through each of our representatives in each of our districts. So for LD 22, we have Senator Eva Diaz, Minority Leader Representative Lupe Contreras, and Representative Lisa Sun. In LD 23, we have Senator Brian Fernandez, Representative Mariana Sandoval, and Representative Michelle Pena, which again, this is our swing district. We have Legislative District 25 with Majority Whip Senator Sina Kerr, Representative Tim Dunn, and Representative Michael Carbone. And in LD 29, we have Senator Shamp, Representative Montenegro, who is a Goodyear resident, and we have Representative Smith. As you'll see on this slide, these are our federal and state legislative principles that assist our team when deciding on how to weigh in on legislation at the Capitol. When a proposed bill either aligns with or threatens one of our primary principles, we will weigh in at the state Capitol either in support or opposition of the legislation. When bills drop that affect us, we send them all out to our department directors and have the true experts weigh in on how something may impact their day-to-day operations. Every session, this averages close to 300 bills. As you may suspect, the 2 principles most commonly discussed are protecting local control and local revenues. We expect a lot of discussion next session around one of our most important guiding principles, protecting and enhancing water supply. Over the interim, in the wake of the Phoenix AMA Groundwater Model Report, the Governor's Office established a Water Policy Council to discuss alternative paths for designation and increased measuring and reporting of rural groundwater pumping. Late last month, the council, which included members such as Representatives Gail Griffin and Stacey Travers, as well as Senator Priya Sundaresan, released their official policy recommendations. In the wake of this, we will continue to work closely with AMWA President Councilmember Loretano, Barbara, and her team to ensure Goodyear's interests are protected. As we'll get into on the next slide, we do anticipate a fight on protecting state shared revenue and food taxes again this year, along with revived housing conversations. Unless you have any questions, I'll hand it back to Jenna to wrap us up.
Wonderful, thank you. Great job, Haley. Not to keep beating a dead horse, but as we've discussed, Goodyear will lose $5 million in local revenue beginning in January 2025, thanks to the statutory preemption on collecting residential rental tax. We have heard from Governor Hobbs on a number of occasions that her administration will pursue an offset of funding to help keep cities whole as a result of that policy. Given the predicted budget deficit, which members are preparing for anywhere between $400 million to $1.6 billion, depending on who you talk to, that seems very unlikely. We may have better luck pursuing policy to push back the effective date of residential rental repeal to give more cities time to plan, but at this point, that also feels like an uphill political battle, as we will also have to protect other local revenues like food tax, construction sales tax, and ensure the state doesn't go back on the agreement that increased our portion of state shared revenue from 15 to 18% during flat tax negotiations a few years ago. I do fully expect potential funds that could be swept include with the funding that Governor Ducey put in place, of which we have been a grant beneficiary through Barbara's shop. Potential HERF shifts again to help fund the Department of Public Safety, something we just got fully funded again a couple of years ago, and cuts to higher education. We have also heard that some of the projects that were funded last year as part of that one-time surplus may get clawed back again to help balance the books. The Joint Legislative Budget Committee does meet this Thursday, where we will get an update on this outlook. Over the last few months, news reports and complaints have ramped up about the growing concern of unlicensed sober living home facilities being dangerous actors in communities across the state. As you may recall, in May, the Governor and Attorney General announced that the FBI has ongoing investigations into sober living home fraudulent billing practices. AG May is going so far as to call it one of the biggest scandals in the history of the state of Arizona. Vice Mayor Cano, Councilmembers Loretano and Gillis have been engaged in conversations with our West Valley neighbors and cities across the state about how best to address this issue working together. Beyond that, Goodyear is very fortunate to have our HOP team and one of the state's top sober living home experts in Officer Scott Daniel, who has been actively involved in trying to crack down on bad actors for years. But we are limited in what we are able to do between Federal Fair Housing Act regulations and state statutory preemptions. Going into next session, we are working with the League on policies to give us more tools in the toolbox to regulate these types of homes. Much like we saw with short-term rental reform back in 2016, there has been a lack of legal authority for cities to investigate and regulate these issues, and we're having to go back to the state to ask for more local control. That feeds in nicely to my next subject, short-term rentals. You'll recall cities in the short-term rental industry reached consensus on compromise language in 2022 that allowed mayor and council to adopt our short-term rental ordinance last year. This compromise came with various moratorium agreements between the two sides, 3 years with no change to the bill that passed, 5 years with no attempts to repeal short-term rental statutes, but no moratorium for communities that wish to seek legislative approval to cap the percentage of short-term rentals in their communities. And the city of Scottsdale did just that by championing 3 league resolutions this past August to allow for caps, limit density, and distance requirements between these types of homes. While Goodyear does not have the proliferation of these types of homes that other communities do, we have been supportive of their efforts that do not violate the moratorium to allow for more local control in this area. Last but certainly not least, as I mentioned earlier, we will still likely see a number of proposals aimed at streamlining city zoning and permitting processes and turnaround times, and potentially go so far to preempt zoning and general plan laws. We've heard recently that the rebrand of what we know as by right zoning has reemerged throughout the country as light touch density. We will keep you updated as bills are introduced. I want to thank those of you that were able to stop by for a quick breakfast last month to welcome our legislators ahead of their Loop 303 industrial tour organized by our wonderful economic development team. I received a lot of positive feedback from a number of our legislators who appreciated this unique and fun opportunity. I've said this before, but we truly are so thankful for your leadership. All of you make our job so much easier with your great reputations and legislative relationships. So thank you again. In addition to this tour, we'll be working with our LEAD staff to do another LEAD Day at the Capitol later this spring, and would love to have you all there as well. If you have any other ideas, thoughts, or suggestions on how to best strengthen these relationships and get more involved, please never hesitate to let us know. With that, we will open it up for questions, comments, or any other issues you'd like to discuss.
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Anybody in the audience like to speak? Seeing none, will the city clerk please read resolution number 2023-2365 by title only?
Adopt resolution number 2023-2365, adopting a 2024 state and federal legislative agenda and providing authorization to the city manager or her designee to take action.
Thank you. Council, enter a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2023-2365. I see a motion and a second on the board. Can open for council discussion. Whoops. Councilmember Gillis.
I want to thank you guys for everything that you've been doing. Haley, I got a chance to work with you in Atlanta, and you are just terrific. And we are so much better having you here. That was a good pick on Jenna's part. And Jenna, as always, you are terrific in bringing us all the latest news that's going on down there. And I think you guys have put together a great package for us, and I thank you for everything. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know it's a lot of hard work.
Councilmember Hampton.
Yeah, also thank you so much for the presentation. I had a quick question on the order of the guiding principles. Is there an order, or is that hitting them all at the same time?
No, they're certainly not listed in a priority order, Mayor and Councilmember Hampton.
Okay, that's all I had. So, no, thank you so much. I know it's a lot of work and trying to wrangle them and trying to advocate for us, so thank you.
Thank you. We're very fortunate to work for this city.
Councilmember Stipp.
You know, this is every year it's an uphill climb. I think we do a lot of protecting of our legislators from the public, understanding the truth behind their actions. And I understand that there's a reason for that, but I think as time goes on, we are finding that the only way to get people to listen is to activate our residents. And I'm going to ask for probably the 5th or 6th year in a row, if we can please find a way to communicate that information to our residents that are not LEAD-only graduates. This past legislative session, I think we missed opportunities for not communicating with the residents about the impact of the rental tax. I think we missed, and not you guys, I mean, we collectively as a city, we have the fear of not antagonizing the legislators because they control a lot of the financial aspects of state shared revenue, et cetera. But people need to understand what we're up against. It is very frustrating, to be on the receiving end of some of their actions. We had a discussion several weeks ago about rallying for sound barriers on the 303. That is not the city of Goodyear's role. That is Steve Montenegro, Sina Kerr, Tim Dunn. That is their responsibility. If we don't have, what I guess my ask of all of this is, can we please get a list of all of their emails and phone numbers so that when a resident approaches us with a complaint about something and it clearly belongs in the state's wheelhouse, I want to be able to give them a direct phone number or a direct email and send that resident to where that question belongs. You guys have done a great job this past legislative session. I think hell would have been easier than what we went through, and I'm not expecting that the one coming up is going to be much easier. So thank you for all of your work.
Councilmember Loretano.
I want to thank you both for your work and everything you do, because I think it's really important. And sometimes you work very quietly to get things done, and then you'll, bring the mayor in and get him to, kind of be the public face, which is very important. And I think we almost had it with the rental tax. I know you guys worked so hard, and, mayor was down there lobbying day and day and day. So I think we did what we could there as a city, and I really do appreciate it. I really do like Councilmember Stipp's idea, because with the budget as it is, you guys are going to be playing like whack-a-mole, pretty much down there, seeing what strikers are coming and what's going to come and where it's going to come at for this, for that. So anything we can do to help you, please let us know. Anything we can do, we'd be more than happy to write letters as well, or anything that you need us to do. Just let us know what you need from us. So, but thank you for all your hard work.
Absolutely, thank you.
Well, seeing nothing else, just to share with Councilmember Stipp, there's been several op-ed pieces I tried to share with Ms. Jenna there that she suggested I not, because they might have been just a tad over the top on my op-ed piece. But I tend to agree with you. I think sometimes we need to go on the offense, and I know, unfortunately, they go past the purse strings, but I think a lot of people don't realize, at least out there in the public. But I will tell you that when I'm out there on the public Pebble Creek clubs, I've been pushing this and trying to educate as many that will listen to me of what's going on out there. And even had a talk with a couple of our representatives directly on how it affects us. And you recall with Carrie Lake was running that I was butting heads with her over this rental and food tax as well. So I keep plying and keep pressing. And I don't know if unfortunately, there's a lot of strong lobbyists behind the scenes that are throwing money at all these that unfortunately is controlling that, which kind of hurts our efforts, in some of this. But I tend to agree with you. We need to educate where a lot of this kind of comes from. I suspect this next legislative session is going to be a challenge, number one, because I think they're probably close to $1 billion in the hole, depending on who you talk to on there. Where they're going to come from, we're always the easy target. And that's my biggest fear, that they're going to look to us to try to balance their budget. So we need to let the public know out there. If you're happy with what we're doing, and that's what we're seeing with our surveys, then let us do our job, and please contact our representatives to stay off, and let us do our job. So, but they do a great job down there. I always tell Jenna after the session, now's the time to start talking to yourself, as long as you don't get any answers, from your talk, because it can be quite trying dealing down there. I mean, we went, I thought, to the wall with all our stuff on the 10, and we just couldn't get it in the budget, but we cleared all the committees pretty handily. But yeah, it's a tough group down there. It's a tough group. So with that, thank you for all you do. With that, let's see, do we have, can we go ahead and pull to a vote? Oh, you got a question?
Yeah. So can you go back to the presentation? I know you can't, but
I was like, it's up here.
Jeff can. It's not here.
This
So
year, last year?
the guiding principles slide. This is basically our agenda, right?
Yes.
So anything that deviates from this is going to theoretically come back to us. Is that correct?
Mayor and Councilmember Stitt, yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right, that, go ahead and vote. Passes 7-0. Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
so much.
presentation.
Thank you.
Council have any comments, commendations, or reports on current events? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a good time at the Litchfield Park Parade. That was good to always celebrate with our neighbors and kind of usher in Christmas in the park. I know the council members were there too, so that was a good event. And then the Hanukkah event over in Goodyear as well was another great celebration of another holiday in our city as well. So good to see a lot of residents were there as well. Yeah, a lot of things happening in holiday season here. So yeah, just good to be out and about. So thank you.
Go ahead, Councilman Campbell.
Thank you. You better take a point of personal privilege. Mayor, I want to thank the Pebble Creek Home Tour Committee and its 5 women, Charlotte Krause, Janet Duke, Suzanne Butler, Barbara Hockert, and myself. And we were able to put together, after working a year and 980 emails later, We put a tour together for one day for 4 hours, and we raised $15,500 for the Goodyear Police Department Shop with a Cop. Now, this committee has been in existence over 25 years. This was our 27th year, and every year we have raised money for this city, and we've done it quietly and independently. We are not a 501c3. We just do it as volunteers. So we have given over $100,000 to the police department to fund their activity for these children, and I think we need to acknowledge that as a city. It's important. I also want to thank the Shop with the Cop staff of the police department, Jennifer and Anna, who orchestrated putting the Shop with the Cop breakfast together, getting Santa there, getting all the decorations, and that takes a lot of effort. They had to get all the gift cards and all of that, and they're just unsung heroes in the police department, and it's really important, I think, to talk about them. Also, I want to thank everyone that had anything to do with the Goodyear Fill a Need program, the employees that did the applications, that did the screening, that did the shopping, that did the wrapping, that did the organization of it. Then the actual distribution is just a well-oiled machine, but it shows how much Goodyear cares for their residents. I absolutely want to point out that Chief Luigi and his family, his wife, his son, and his daughter have been there from day one, and it's wonderful to see how they've grown up and gotten big. And also I want to thank the fire cadets that were there. They provided the really heavy lifting that we needed Saturday morning that was so important. I want to thank Sabrina Dizzo and her family. She is, I call her the project manager, but that's not what she is. I don't know how she gets roped into it, but she's always the chairman of Fill a Need, and she organizes the shopping and everything. Bruce Kesselman from the ballpark let me store 45 turkeys in his freezer. I mean, you talk about organization, it's unbelievable. I want to thank All Faith Community Services for giving me 45 turkeys so that we could give them to our families free. I want to thank Deanna, Mercy, all the recreation staff for being there Saturday for us, the Pebble Creek Pickleball Club for almost 1,000 toys that they gave the chief and I on December 2nd. It's just unbelievable. And then, lo and behold, we ended up with $6,500 cash donation to give Fill a Need. So I just want everyone to know what a wonderful, caring community the city of Goodyear is, and that we try to take care of those in need. And the stories that were shared Saturday morning broke my heart, because there were people there that weren't going to have Christmas, and they didn't have food, and they didn't have diapers, and they didn't have things that we take for granted. So they were so grateful, and they absolutely could not believe that we were stepping out for them. So thank you to everyone that had anything at all to do with it. It was just a wonderful program.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Thank you, Wally. Yeah, I've always said, Wally, there's no community that would match up to us, second to none, on what our community does when we need something. So thank you for bringing that to attention. Anything else? City Manager?
Yes, Mayor. The second weekend of Holidays on the Square, a very merry market, was held on Friday, December 8th at the Goodyear Civic Square Park with over 3,000 people in attendance. The vendors reported over $36,000 in sales during that 3-hour event.
Ooh.
And the rink, which is open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, had over 900 skaters through the weekend.
That's awesome. All right, with nothing else, next meeting will be December 18th. No further business. This meeting is adjourned. Where are we going? Let's see.